Go.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Wait,
7, 8,
What's with all the counting?
9, 9,
What's going
9.
on?
No, wait, you're going to mess me up. 9,
With the
10,
counting?
11, 12. We're commanded to count, so I'm counting. For some reason, this counts to God, so I'm going to count it. Where was I? I got to start over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As soon as we finish this counting, then we're going to talk about some laws, and then I'm going to go back to counting something else.
What are you
I got to
counting
start
again?
over again.
What are you counting again?
I'm counting Gershom. No, everybody move back over here again to the left. Stand still so I can get you the head count. We're doing a count. All the Gershonites. What was the number again?
And the number of counting shall be 3. No, sorry.
Oh, my word.
Okay, folks. In case you haven't figured it out, this is 2.5 opinions, where we take life less seriously than most people. So, okay, so Chris or Jesse, what's a good quote unquote synopsis of this portion?
Well, a brief synopsis. That's
How would
you
you
have a lot of.
how would you roll this up in like a minute or 15 seconds, 20,
Well,
20
let's
second
see.
roll up?
Well, let's see. Besides the beginning and the end of this Torah portion, which deal with counting, we are taught about people who have Chemai or ritual impurity. We also learn about what a thief should do to repay. We also learn about the sota, which is a very interesting situation. It's the situation where a woman is accused by her husband of marital infidelity, which that's an interesting subject in among itself. We also learn about the Nazarite vows as well. So what in the world does all of this apply? How does it smash all together in one big ball? Because it seems random.
Are they related?
Yeah.
Is there any relation?
Is there a meaning for them to be grouped? Because they seem rather random.
Teshuvah.
Okay.
No.
Teshuvah.
Someone under a vow is Teshuvah.
Well, it brings the person back in line with what God wants, and the person is either thigh rots, belly swells, or they conceive seed.
Okay, that's the sota, the law of jealousy. But what about the separation of the clean? Clean and unclean. I mean, anybody that's unclean, go out of the camp. And the things that are unclean that are listed for us is if you have zerat. Well, we don't have zerat today, so we don't have to worry about that one. If you're a man and you have some type of emission, well, okay, you're unclean. Go outside the camp until you're clean again. Or if you buried your dad, you buried your son, you buried a family member, you buried anybody, you came in contact with a human corpse.
Right. And so
what sin is that I would have to be separated, that teshuvah has anything to do with it?
Well, yeah, right, but it's not necessarily sin so much as ritualistic impurity. If you go outside because you touched a dead body, or you had as a person used to say, nocturnal emission, then you cleanse yourself and you come back to God at evening, right? So it's a return of sorts. It's a teshuvah. Okay. Tentatively, I'm tying all this together on roughly.
Okay.
But.
Okay. All right. So there's some restoration going on there. But what about the Netzer? What restoration is going on with someone that chooses? I mean, this isn't a commandment that you have to. This is, if you want to, okay, do it this way. Where's the teshuvah there?
Right, but what's the vow of the Nazir for?
Now, that's a good question.
There are several theories that, because it places him in the status almost of the Kohen Hagadol, is that this individual can go outside and teach or admit or minister or even check on things of maybe like the mold that shows up in a house, and you have to have a Kohen to come do it. Well, if you have a Nazarite, he could do it because he's of the same stature.
I
And
haven't.
if he does
I
it
haven't,
for
I haven't
30
heard
days,
that one.
huh?
Have you heard of that, Jesse? I haven't heard of that one. That one is new to me. I mean,
Well,
I
I kind of heard it, offhandedly, and I'm like, well, okay, that kind of makes sense because he's elevated. He can do these things, but
it might make sense, but yeah, I've never heard of that one before. I'll go back and check, but even on the Tractate and Talmud, I don't think it's covered that way. It does equate the Nazir with the Kohen Gadol as far as a spiritual status.
right.
But as far as taking on the role of a Kohen Gadol,
Yeah, they don't touch any of the work of the
they don't touch that. I mean,
tabernacle
a
at all.
Nazir can't go into the Holy of Holies.
Oh, right, right. And I said that's why they can go out of the camp or out of the area to go and inspect or do. And again, that's a loose understanding. I'm not saying that's canon. Okay, I'm just saying.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if there's truth on that one. I'll just have to check on it. So yeah, so we go through these odd laws that almost seem out of place because we're counting the priests. We ended up counting some of the priests' last Torah portion. We go in and we count the last of the tribes and we assign work to them and we put them under the charge of Itamar, Aaron's son. Then we go into these laws, and two of these laws, this is the first time we're really hearing of this. And then we go into the Birkat Kohanim. Why is that even here? That one seems out of place, unless, maybe, excuse me, maybe you got something there, Frank, at least with the tying together of the Nazir with the spiritual status of the Kohen Gadol. So we got the Birkat Kohanim, and that's an interesting little blessing. There's some fun things going on with that I think Jesse was studying, and he might be able to bring forth. And then we go back into counting again, and we're counting what everybody brings, and it's the same thing. Everybody. Why couldn't Moses just said, and everybody brought the same stuff, and this is what they brought? Let's shorten this up.
Every tribe needs to be counted, so you have to count each tribe.
Yeah, now, and it's like a Jewish friend of mine said it's almost like God is Scrooge McDuck. He loves going into his vault and counting all of his money. I mean, he's out there counting. He loves counting his people. He really seems to obsess with counting the people until we get to certain things and don't count that.
That's right.
But let's count this. I want to count my people. I love my people. I'm counting my people. And there's a strange twist on the whole idea of counting, and that is one must count in order to be counted.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
In other words, if I'm counting you, you have worth. It's like picking teams at dodgeball. It really is. I want you. You're on my team.
Yeah,
I want you. And then Chris, the fat kid that's awkward and stumbles around and has no two front teeth, is the last kid to get picked all the time. And it's like, nobody wants me. Oh, but you were counted. Well, that's because there was nobody left and you didn't have a choice. Right. I wanted to be the first kid that was counted. I wanted to count. I want to be meaningful. And maybe that's really what it is God is showing the value and the meaning and the worth of these individuals, and that's why the counting is so important to him.
I noticed something in the commentary. The counting goes along with the order of the tribes as they march in martial array when the tent of meeting, the temple goes out from, when they go, when the cloud rises, they go. So it has to do with the counting goes in order of the marching order.
Sure. Now that's when it gets to the heads of the tribes bringing what they have, yes. But we're ending up last week's and starting this week's with the counting of the tribes of Levi, or the clans of Levi, and assigning them duties and responsibilities and what their service is. And I kind of want that job. Start work at 30 and retire at 50. I'm sorry, but that kind of sounds pretty good. I mean, after 20 years in American society, you're owed a retirement, but that certainly doesn't mean you get to quit working.
Yeah, no. No, but with the amount of offerings that are brought, you know, the tribes of Levi or the groups of Levi in the those tribes, they're going to have a great big barbecue. I mean, come on, all of that each day, each day, each day. So, uh, and of course, the English translation of some of the offerings, you get the one silver challenger or chaser of 130 gold shekels. Then you get another one that weighs 70 shekels. And then you get the spoon that weighs 10 gold shekels.
So before we get too lost up into this, why don't we get this started by reading the portion before we crack heavily into it again? I was thinking the third aliyah.
Technicalities, jeez.
Of course, I'm the technical one.
All right, so what portion would you think would be best to read?
I already have the third aliyah ready and waiting.
Okay, if you're ready, I'll do the blessing.
Ready?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bakar banu mikol ha'amim bitan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. Oh, Melech Naaman.
Amen. Third aliyah of Parsha Naso, Numbers chapter 5, verse 1 through 10. Read from Chabad's translation. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel to banish from the camp all those afflicted with tzara'at, or with a male discharge, and all those unclean through contact with the dead. Both male and female you shall banish. You shall send them outside the camp, and they not defile their camps in which I dwell among them. The children of Israel did so. They sent them outside the camp as the Lord had spoken to Moses. So did the children of Israel do. The Lord then spoke to Moses, saying, Tell the children of Israel, when a man or woman commits any sins against man to act treacherously against God, and that person is found guilty, they shall confess the sin they committed and make restitution to the principal amount of his guilt, add its fifth to it, and give it to the one against whom he was guilty. But if the man has no kinsman to whom to make restitution, the debt which is restored to the Lord is to be given to the Cohen. This is besides the atonement ram, through which expiation is made for him. Every offering of all the children of Israel's holy things which is brought to the Cohen shall be his. Everyone's holy things shall belong to him. Whether a man gives to the Cohen shall be his.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah imet b'kayei olam notav b'tukenu. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. Oh, Melech Naaman. So, where do we go from here, folks? What's we were talking about it. We were going here and there, but I think my opinion is it's all about teshuvah and loosely tied together, but it all comes back to the priest blessing. The what'd you say? The Berkat Kohanim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're muted, Chris. So, what's that all about? What is that blessing?
The blessing, the Berkat Kohanim. You're asking what it is? Is that what I'm understanding out of you?
Well, I was kind of hoping you'd read it in Hebrew, but
Well, yeah. So we're going. First of all, am I even on?
Yeah, you're on.
No,
now.
you're on.
Yeah, we were talking about these other things because we didn't even read the Berkat Kohanim or the Aaronic blessing just yet. And though I can loosely see what you're talking about as far as Teshuvah, and something of the capstone is the Berkat Kohanim. Jesse, did you want to talk about what we just read first, or do we want to go ahead and jump into the Aaronic blessing?
Well, let's build up to the Aaronic blessing because there's so much beforehand. Hence
Building up to the crescendo.
Yeah, exactly. Building up to the crescendo, if you want to use that terminology, because we go flying straight into the. Granted, I read the third Aliyah, but we are flying straight into the understanding of what needs to be removed from the camp, what kind of separation needs to be put between God and what is considered unclean.
Okay, so I have to
And
take
the
my
strangest
sneakers outside the camp, right?
well, the strangest thing about it is God's doing a loving kind of thing because he's saying, please remove it from the camp because I don't want you to die. It essentially is that whole mindset behind it that if someone still holds this tzara'at, this uncleanliness, whether it be through tzara'at, male discharge, contact with the undead, or others.
Contact with the dead, not the
Sorry,
undead.
sorry. Yeah,
You've been watching zombie movies again. The undead. Yeah. So
The Walking Dead. What?
Yeah, this is a true act of mercy or grace with God, saying, okay, I am coming to dwell with the people. I'm dwelling in the camp. I've set boundaries. Where have we seen these boundaries before? Oh yeah, in the whole creation series, there's boundaries for water. God sets boundaries for light and darkness. He sets boundaries for waters. He sets boundaries for the earth. He sets boundaries. God is, even from the very beginning, God was setting boundaries on things. So here we go. And God is going to say, I'm going to dwell in the camp. So build a specific place. Not like Moses or anybody else actually thought God lived in that, but it was a place that we could commune. And then there was that is the between the wings of the cherubim above the mercy seat of the ark, and there's a boundary around that, and it's called the Holy of Holies. And then there's another boundary which is called the holy place, and the holy place only certain people can come, and they had an experience and a touching with God in dealing with the candelabra, the illumination, dealing with the face of or the bread of the face, dealing with all these things in the holy place. And then we have another boundary outside of that, and that's where the altar and the wash basin is. And then we have another boundary outside of that, which is the camp itself. And God is saying, I am going to dwell within the midst of my people, the very center of my people. But each one of these boundaries is a level of separation for your safety. The holy fire is coming down. Do you really want to be standing in the middle of the fire pit when it hits? Probably not. And as that fire is burning, if you've ever been to our house and we have the fire pit out in the backyard, and we got this big metal bowl and fires inside, you only want to get so close to that thing because it's going to fry you. And you don't want to touch the bowl. You want to be just a little bit away from it. And the further outside of it gets, you might see the glow. You might experience something of the glow. You don't have the heat. It's a little bit more comfortable. And then you get too far out, and now you can see it, but you don't feel the warmth of it. And if you get even further out, you can't even see it anymore. And so these are those boundaries. And here's the holy fire coming down, and God is saying that in my presence, in my face, certain things cannot exist. My very existence within your camp will burn out the impurities, will destroy, will totally consume anything that is not holy and pure. And so God is warning the people, make sure these impurities are removed, because I don't want my very presence to kill you. So it's an act of mercy.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, it is a mercy that he shows us that you know, if you want to come close to me, you need to be a certain way. You need to be, together with these commandments. You need to be, not of the stuff that has to be put outside the camp. You need to behave in a certain way to come into my presence. So yeah, yeah, it's a blessing. It's a kindness. So what? I mean, we're counting, then we're over here, then we're over there, then we're here again, then we're counting again. It just, and I have to say, as you've said so many times before, Chris, it is more topical than chronological, but this seems to be both at the same time. Yes, no?
Yeah, you could be. There's definitely a weird order to all of this, but let's go ahead and go into Jesse. Did you have something with before we get to the Bearcat? How are we going to build up into it?
Well, if we see, I had it on the tip of my tongue. If we look at the way that this this Torah portion is laid out, we keep going further and further down until we reach the Birkat Kohanim. I mean, the whole layout has something there, but what is it is the major question. Well, so far we've pointed one possibility is this kindness, this compassion, as you put it, in displaying the separation of the camp. Because if you are unclean and you're closer to God, you get burned. Well, so then the question poses, how does this apply to, say, for example, the subject of acting treacherously against a fellow man, or in this case, as they've worded it, stealing? The whole play out on this one is you're supposed to make restitution. Pay a fifth back, but still make restitution, full on restitution. You're supposed to, and if you can't find that individual, you have no way to make restitution. You make restitution to God, because it's the whole aspect of, I can't apologize to my fellow man, so I know that I can at least, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, we have a dualistic aspect here. One, isn't it interesting that if I go over to Frank's house and I steal his lawnmower, and I get caught, the cops come, they find his lawnmower, the cops are going to keep the lawnmower, and then I'm going to go to trial, and I'll be found guilty, or I admit my guilt, and I've got to pay the state. The lawnmower, yeah, the lawnmower is confiscated, and eventually Frank will get his lawnmower back, but I'm going to pay a fine, but my fine goes to the state. It doesn't go to restoring Frank's loss. He gets his lawnmower back, and everybody says, oh, okay, it's all good. And Frank looks at it and goes, but it's broken. I can't even use it. It was running fine until he stole it. The Torah says, God's law is that, no, you return the mower and you return 1/5 to it because you deprived your neighbor of the use of whatever it was that you took. And if by perchance you just borrowed something and you kept it and forgot all about it, and even if Frank forgot all about it, but it's still in your possession, and then it comes to your attention, oh my goodness, I still have this. I forgot all about it. Guess what? You return it, and you return 1/5, and then you go to God. After all of this, then you still go to God, and to restore the relationship with God, now you offer up a guilt offering. If it was an outright theft, you offer a sin offering and a guilt offering. And this is a crazy thing, because when it comes down to it, I did wrong to Frank. So why is God claiming rights to the wrong that I did to Frank? I didn't do anything to God. Oh, but we can say we broke his laws. Great, but how did I harm God?
Well,
how did I harm God by stealing from Frank?
Because you didn't obey his law.
How does that hurt God?
Well,
why should I? Why then, if I can't find Frank's, God forbid, Frank is deceased, or can't find him, I can't find his relatives. Now I have to pay it all to God. How does that restore me with Frank? The interesting thing with this is, before I can even go to God, I have to restore that relationship with Frank. And because I broke the relationship with Frank, I also have a duty to restore my relationship with God. It has nothing to do with, and I want to be careful on how I say this, because I know it's going to be misinterpreted. It's not so much the idea of that I broke a commandment, as much as it is that I have destroyed, or I've tarnished, I've hurt the relationship with someone that belongs to God, and I belong to God. And within God's house, this is how we act, this is how we live, this is what we do, this is what we say, this is how we treat each other, because this is how God treats us. So I have broken down that relationship with Frank, and by extension, I have also broken down that relationship with God. Because if you were to harm one of my children, guess what? You not only hurt the relationship with my son, you hurt your relationship with me.
Yep.
So you're going to make it right with my son, but you're also going to do some type of
mea culpa
restoration with me.
Right. But you know how we talk about, it's not fences much as a guardrail to keep you from, getting harmed. With all of these things, the people receiving the laws are going, oh wow, that's going to be costly if I ever think about doing that. The honest ones, okay, the honest ones are going to go, oh, I never want to do that, because then I have to do this and this and this and this, and I'll hurt God's feelings, as much as a human can hurt God's feelings, and it's possible. But having to go through all that to restore, that's like hurting your mom or your dad, their feelings, and you're just making them cry.
Yeah, and so let's take it back to the introduction here, and that is that God says, I don't want to hurt you. So because of my existence, my existence will obliterate impurity and sin. Then make sure we have a separation here, because I want you to continue to exist. I just want you to be able to come back into the closer flame. And in that light, then it is, here's how you live within the flame of how you treat others. Because if you don't treat others this way, then my existence in your community, one of two things has to happen. Either I must withdraw or you must withdraw. Because my flame, my existence is so hot that the closer you get, the slightest mismovement, the slightest misjudgment, you're going to get burned. And I don't want you burned.
Right.
So
Nadab and Abihu.
Yeah, restore that relationship with your brother so that you can come and restore your relationship with me, and we're good again.
Right.
And that's it. So where do we go on from there, Jesse?
From there, we jumped straight into the. The the Hebrew has just now slipped me. The sotah. Yes, it is the sotah, the law of a jealous husband. This one's a whole ball of mess in essence, if you will, because it almost sounds like voodoo magic. I mean, the man is jealous. He has no idea if the woman has slept with this other individual or not. But he suspects something's off. So he is to bring her to the Cohen, and they're to do the voodoo witchcraft of tongue in cheek,
Careful, careful.
tongue in cheek here, of taking dirt from the floor of the tabernacle, put it in water, wash the holy name of God and the curse into the water, and the woman's supposed to drink it. And if she was innocent, she becomes whole again, if you will. Some people say that she becomes pregnant then and there. Others say that if she was unable to conceive previously, she is able to conceive now. But if she is guilty, the whole subject is she is, by all intents and purposes, dead. She's not literally dead, but with everything that happens to her, the thigh rotting away and the belly swelling, it's essentially death.
Yeah, she's out for
Given,
porn.
yeah,
The Talmud will come back and say, yes, this is a horrible death. She doesn't survive this.
no.
But oddly enough, the Talmud says the person that she had the adulterous relationship with is going to die the same way.
Oh, really?
It's not in the Torah, but it is in the Talmud. That's a different discussion. So here's something interesting with this. Verses 12 and 13. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, should a man's wife go astray? And now Chabad's translation it's okay. I think they try to make it a little bit harsher than what the actual words are, but I don't know Hebrew as well as they, so I'm not going to question them. They say, a man's wife go astray and deal treacherously with him. Well, the actual word is transgress against him. She transgresses him. How does she transgress? Verse 13. And a man lies with her. But the adultery is hidden from her husband's eyes. He doesn't see it. She hides it. And not only does she hide it, but there are no witnesses. Remember, for death penalty, there must be witnesses. You cannot kill someone without a witness. Again, think of America's laws, America's judicial system, which is not bad, but we can incarcerate, or worse yet, we can put to death someone on circumstantial evidence. There was no witness. But we can prove the crime existed, yes, but there was no witness. Torah says you got to have a witness. Sorry for those of you that want the death penalty, but it's not the same thing in Torah. So there's no witness against her. And look at the last part of verse 13. And she was not seized. She wasn't taken into custody. Now, I know a lot of Messianics want to go back to Yeshua or Jesus with the adulterous woman. And a group of men bring out this woman that was caught in the act of adultery, and they throw her down before him, and he just kind of blows them off, not even paying attention. He's scribbling in the dirt, and the Messianics want to come back and say, see, this is the sota. That's what Jesus was doing, is he was messing with the dirt, and he might have even been writing this down or trying to use some analogy or euphemism for what about the sota, the law of the jealous husband. See, God is jealous because you're the one that is actually in adultery. But I don't know if it fits. There's a lot of things going on here. I think Talmud does a pretty good job of explaining it, and that is this. This marriage is in shambles. This didn't just happen. Even more so, the man just can't have an odd thought that pops into his head. Oh my gosh, my wife is committing adultery. No. Talmud says the husband has to declare in front of witnesses, you cannot be alone with this man. That has to be declared before you can even claim the right of sota or the law of jealousy. You have to make that declaration. And so Talmud is really putting clear a very ugly situation we have here within a marriage. Not only that, we have this strange, like Jesse says, it's almost like witchcraft. This is Macbeth's witches stirring up a concoction of eye of newt and dust from the floor, and then we're going to write words on a paper.
Boil, toil, and trouble. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
exactly. And we're going to wash the words off into the water, and then you're going to drink this potion. And if you're innocent, guess what? Magically, you're going to give birth. But if you're guilty, it's a horrible, debilitating crime, and you're going to die a miserable death. Talmud also adds one other thing to it. When the husband brings her to the priest, she has to agree. What? Yeah, she has to go willingly. So for the for those weird accusations from non-Christians over the years of how rigid and strict and horrible and blood-sucking these Jews and the Jewish God is, they really ought to look at how Jews have applied the law. And this is one of those cases. You just can't drag your wife before the court because you don't like her and you suspect. Because you were having beers with your friends out in the backyard over a barbecue, and you just thought your wife was a little bit too friendly. No, you can't have the law of jealousy apply to that. You have to make a proclamation in front of witnesses. And then you have to bring your wife to the priest, and she has to agree to going with you. And the issue is she had to have been seen going into a private place. She had to have been seen going into the bedroom. And no witness saw what actually went on in that bedroom. And then you bring her to the priest. And the priest does this magic stuff. And she has to say amen for above and amen for below. And then she drinks of it. And so we have waters of bitterness that's mixed with the dust of the earth, the dust of the Mishkan, the afar, which is what it's called. It's the afar, I don't remember the phrase, but afar of the Adama, of the dust of the earth, the dust of the Mishkan. There's a lot of things going on. And so the Talmud reminds us that this marriage was in shambles to begin with. They were accusing each other all along. The restoration of this marriage was difficult at this point. It's come to the point where he comes home and he's in a bad mood and he accuses her of burning the dinner. And instead of admitting she burned the dinner or explaining how or why, she accuses him of, well, you were late coming home from work again. And then, well, I wouldn't have been at work so late if you hadn't spent all my money. Well, I wouldn't have spent all my money if you, and it's accusation against accusation. It goes back and forth. And there's no teshuvah, like you said, Frank. There's no restoration. It's just defending yourself by accusing the person that's accusing you.
See,
Neither party is taking responsibility for their own actions. It's just accusation built on accusation. Go ahead.
there's one thing, and maybe other people have grasped on it, but if you have to have her come willingly, after you've made this declaration to people and in front of everybody, and she refuses, then that speaks to the condition of the marriage. Whereas if she goes willingly, then she has openly said, "Look, I'll prove my innocence." Now,
Yes.
some would do that with deception, but in general.
And they talk a little bit about even the act of her disobeying her husband by going into another room with this man, by setting herself into the position of being accused of adultery, was an act on herself of getting her husband's attention, and it goes off into that. And then instead of him just giving her a bill of divorce, because after all, divorce was easy in Judaism. Why didn't he just divorce her? And so they're showing that this couple actually do love each other. They're just caught up in this cycle of turmoil and accusing each other over and over. And there has to be some drastic event that's going to restore them. But the laws of Sotah doesn't restore them. If you notice, as we get to the end of this, they don't go skipping off hand into the sunset saying, oh, I love you, no, I love you more, oh, I love you more. You don't have that. You don't even have any words of forgiveness between the two. They still need marriage counseling even after this. But
she becomes fertile, so
she
is the Torah
conceives.
saying that
Yes.
having a child will cure the marriage?
No, that's not what this is about. And so the sages are asking, so what is this about? What is actually happening here? Because this seems like a law and a requirement that is based on something that, does it really happen? Could this actually happen? Whose marriage would be so bad, but yet they still want to be together, that both would agree to do this thing for the fear that she either dies a horrible death or she's conceived and they're still not getting along? Where else do we get this? Because, and this is a method of interpretation, a method of study, I should say, not interpretation, a method of study, and that is all the stories that we read back in Bereshit. All those stories tell us about Torah. All the laws that we get from Exodus through Deuteronomy are the laws and ordinances that those stories were trying to teach us. So where do we have someplace in all of Bereshit where we have a woman that has transgressed, or a person that has transgressed, where we have the dust of the ground, the dust of the earth? Oh yeah, we didn't mention this, did we? That curse that's written out on the parchment that's going to be washed off into the water that she's going to drink. Guess what is in that curse? God's holy name. The Yod He and the Vav He. And in Judaism, to erase God's holy name is tantamount to treating God as though he's nothing. It's a violation of the commandment. You shall not take the Lord your God's name in vain. Writing it and then erasing it, deleting it, worse yet, washing it off, treats it as though it's vanity. It's in vain. It meant nothing. And so here, the Talmud says that God is saying, for the purpose of bringing peace back into this relationship, I will allow my name to be erased. So we're seeing a huge importance on this in God's eyes. So where else do we see water being mixed with dust, erasing, because the phrase here is to erase for the law of the Sotah? Where do we see something being erased by waters?
Noah.
Ah, very good. We have the flood. And what happened in the flood? Man, who is created in the image of God from the dust of the earth, is going to be erased. And that's God's own words in describing the flood situation. The evil of men's heart is continual from his youth. Therefore, I will erase him. It doesn't say kill him. It doesn't say destroy him. It doesn't say remove him. It says I will erase him. The exact same words here of erasing the curse with God's name from the parchment into the waters. You know what else is fascinating and an interesting link on this? The Torah says it's a ruach of jealousy. It's a spirit of jealousy that comes upon the man. What happened when the rain subsided? Just as the waters are getting to recede, before the land comes back up, what do we see? The Spirit of God, the Ruach of God hovering above the water. So we have the Spirit there as well. We have the waters there. We have the dust there. We have the name of God in the aspect that man was created in the image of God, and it's going to be erased. I must erase man from the face of the earth. And then after it's all said and done, Noah brings the sacrifice, and we have the offering that's given up here. And what happens? What's the first commandment God gives Noah after the flood?
Be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply. Noah was found not guilty. And the first thing is, be fruitful and multiply. The woman was found not guilty, and she immediately conceives. So the law of jealousy might be a little bit deeper than what we think. And it really might tie back into what's going on with the flood. Maybe if we understood more of what was happening in the flood, we'd understand more of what the law of jealousy is. Now, I do agree that this law of jealousy probably is God and his chosen. God and all of humanity. And then we single it out with God and his chosen, his firstborn. Because after all, God treats her as a woman, as his bride, and she commits adultery, and he casts her out. But something else, and this is the last thing, and I'll let Frank, you and Jesse talk. And Jesse's laughing over there. The one last thing, and I'll close on this with the Sotah. The Talmud says that the man can never again bring an accusation like this against his wife. Never again can she be submitted to the curse of these waters. And what happened at the end of Noah? God promises, never again will I curse the earth with a flood like this. So we have that repetition there. We have truly too many ties to ignore. The law of Sotah and the flood of Noah that erased all of mankind save 8. And 8, there's a neat thing with the numerology of 8 and even with this law of jealousy, but I promised I would stop. So Jesse,
So
Frank, what do we got next?
let me ask real quick. Does that mean that they have to fly a rainbow flag?
Not going there. Ain't touching it.
I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm the irreverent one. I come up with these things. So, okay, so we had the Sotah. Now, what's next, Jesse?
Well, next step, since we are going down in the line, before we continue down on this line, I'm going to have to state, this is rather interesting. It seems like every one of these do have a tie-in. So I could be going crazy here, but it feels like every single one of them have a tie-in, and that tie-in is a type of stage of love, if you will, based on what God sees is necessary, what is needed there. But we'll get to that here in a bit, because I'm pretty sure we'll go into that very well, very thoroughly when we finally reach the Aaronic benediction. But I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, the next stage of this story is dealing with the Nazirite vow. And that's an interesting one in among itself for those who have been waiting for this little topic. The Nazirite vow is a vow that individuals can make, anyone can make. And the vow says, it's sort of like being a Buddhist monk on the hill or something along those lines. You're essentially trying to say, I want to be closer to God. Okay, God says this is how you do it.
So do I have to go to Nazareth to do this?
Yeah, no connection whatsoever. Absolutely none. Sorry, I can't remember which Catholic sect that says because Jesus was born in Nazareth, therefore he was a Nazarite. No, no connection.
If he was a Nazarite, then why did he feel highly inclined to turn water into wine? But that's something.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, the God says, all right, you want to be closer to me? Here are the 3 restrictions: no eating grapes or drinking wine. You don't touch the wine at all.
Oh yeah, it's even more than that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you cannot partake of any product of the vine, a grapevine. You can drink alcohol. You can have a beer. You can drink scotch. You can have vodka. So obviously it's not the alcohol thing. There's something about the grape, and that makes that's really odd in itself. It says you can't have grapes, you can't have raisins, you can't have vinegar from grapes, you can't have new wine, you can't have old wine, nothing from the grapes. So go ahead.
And to really drive that home, we can even read the first few verses for this. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel. You shall say to them, a man or a woman who sets himself apart by making a Nazirite vow to abstain for the sake of the Lord, he shall abstain from new wine and aged wine. He shall not drink even vinegar made from new wine or aged wine, nor shall he drink anything in which grapes have been steeped, and he shall neither eat fresh grapes nor dried ones. For the duration of this abstinence, he shall not eat any product of the grapevine from seeds to skins." And as we proceed onward, he even says, we go straight into the hair. All days of his vow of abstinence, no razor shall pass over his head until the completion of the term that he abstains for the sake of the Lord. It shall be sacred. He shall allow the growth of his hair of his head to grow wild. But oddly enough, it's only the hair.
Well, okay, now let's pause, because I get the tie to the Goan Gadol of not drinking wine. I can get a tie there because, after all, God commanded Moshe and Aaron. He commanded Aaron and said, one, you're not going to go in anytime you want to into the Holy of Holies, and two, anytime you're doing the priestly function, you're to abstain from new wine and old wine. And generally, it's translated into English in Christian Bibles as of wine and strong drink, but in the Hebrew, it really is wine, new wine, and old wine, and it's a variation of wine and grapes. So even brandy wine, no brandy, vodka, it's okay. Wine, no.
Beer, good.
Yeah, but no, and actually, I don't want to say it's okay to
Yeah.
get drunk. That's not what I'm trying to
Right,
say here.
right.
It's just I can see the tie of what you're connecting, Jesse. Is grapes no good for Cohen Gadol, grapes no good for Nazir, but hair. I see no commandment regarding the Cohen Gadol regarding hair.
Noah.
I don't see it for Noah.
No, I meant Noah's the connection, because
Oh,
he became a husbandryman, and he made grapes, and he or cultivated grapes, and he drank wine, and he was drunk.
okay, but what about his hair? We're talking about his hair. For the Nazir, you cannot. First of all, when you start the vow, you shave every hair off your body. While you're under the vow, you cannot shave. You can't even pluck your eyebrows. You can wear fine jewelry. You can dainty it up. You can put mousse in your hair. You can do the handlebar mustache. You can do whatever you want to your hair. You just can't cut it. So where's the connection of hair on his head specifically and the Cohen Gadol, the Cohen Gadol?
How about a new birth? You don't normally cut the hair of a baby until they're 3 years old.
Okay, but that could be anyone. Where's the connection with the Cohen?
Oh well, I was just thinking rebirth, or new birth, or born again. That's
Okay, and Jesse,
Well,
if you're reading
real
it or if you don't know it, there is in the verbiage of how it talks about the hair on the head of the Nazir and what is on the Cohen Gadol's head, and even more so, he has this funny hat.
well,
Go ahead, Jesse.
well, we'll. I can see where you're going with that, and I know where you're wanting to stretch with that. But since we're having a little struggle here, let's go to the next obvious one. We'll get back to the hair. We'll come back to the hair, because if we see two out of the three connections, we're pretty sure we'll find the third. But anyways, as we proceed onward, another thing they're supposed to abstain from is dead. They're not supposed to come in contact with the dead, um, whether it be a random individual or a close relative, even to bury your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, you shall not defile. You'll I'll even read it as it says, all the days that he abstains for the Lord, he shall not come into contact with the dead. To his father, to his mother, to his brother, to his sisters, he shall not defile himself for the day if they die, for the crown of his God is upon his head. Well, I think I just now hit the button we were looking for the hair as well as the dead at the same time. Considering,
Okay, now doesn't it say in Torah that a man shall not go unshorn?
I cannot remember where it's located, but last I checked, the only location dealing with man cutting or uncutting their hair would involve the process of looking like a woman. They are not supposed to have hair that is
Well,
appearing.
Frank, say what you said again. Repeat it. I want to make sure I get it right.
Okay. I know we've already read it. It's in one of the portions that we've read so far. A man shall not go unshorn. Shorn as in, he shall not have long hair, essentially.
I'm gonna have to go back and look that up because the best place that it comes in is Paul in I'm going to forget exactly where, but Paul said that it's a disgrace for a man to have long hair. It's basically saying that the, the early Christian church used to attribute long hair with femininity, and therefore he's got to keep it up above a certain length, whatever that length was, nobody knows. But a woman can have long hair, but she has to keep it covered. A man should not have long hair, and he should keep it uncovered, unless of course he's a priest and he's going to cover his head. But Jesse hit it on the head right there. Is in verse 7 is, for the crown of his God is upon his head. And that's it. The hair that's growing, all the new growth of hair, especially the hair on his head, is that crown of the high priest that says, holy unto God. He has now set himself apart, holy unto God. And this is where he is equated spiritually with the high priest. However, the Talmud warns for the Nazir, if you're doing this to be in the position of high priest, then you're just like Korah. You don't have the rights, the privileges, the duties and responsibilities of the Kohen Gadol. But if you're doing this because you want that relationship, you want that closeness, you want to be able to enter into the Holy of Holies in a spiritual aspect, maybe not the physical, but a spiritual, and you're entering into that closeness, that bond, you're within that conduit, then this is what you're going to do. And where the sages are really flummoxed with all of this is a woman is forbidden from being a priest. She can't be. But to be a Nazir, a man or a woman. And this is Ish and Isha. In a very broad, a very general respect, anyone, Jew or non-Jew. Now Talmud's going to come back to say the ger, but not a goy, and they're going to go off in a different direction on that. But
Oh, you mean the ger toshav?
yes, the sojourner, the one that's abiding by Israel's laws or the laws of Judaism, the non-Jew. The point is this: a non-Levite can have that spiritual connection, can experience that spiritual closeness that the Kohen Gadol has when he's in the Holy of Holies by taking upon himself this vow, but here's how you're going to do it. Now, the crazy thing that I don't get, I don't understand, when we go through and we see what has to happen, and we see that Paul did this in Acts chapter 18, and we see that Paul was commanded by Peter and James that, hey, we've got two people here under a vow earlier in Acts to prove that you are not going against Moses and the law of Moses, to prove that all these accusations against you are false. We want you to go through this with them and pay the sacrifices. And look at what one of these sacrifices is. It's a sin sacrifice. Now, I don't know what church you guys grew up in. The church I grew up in said there is no longer a sacrifice for sin. Don't do it. Because as soon as you offer up a sacrifice for sin, you're negating the sacrifice that Yeshua made for you. But Paul not only paid the sacrifice, later on in chapter 18 of Acts, it says that he cut his hair because he was under a vow. What vow would he be under that he would cut his hair? It would be the Nazirite vow, which requires a sacrifice for sin. If Paul truly believes that Yeshua is the sacrifice for sin that ends all sacrifices for sin, why is he making a sacrifice for sin? I've heard the crazy, lame arguments. But when it comes down to it, he sacrificed a sin offering. Better yet, since I want to understand the Jewish approach to this, let's go back. What sin does the Nazir do? That he must bring a sacrifice for sin. Where's the sin? What did he do wrong? Let's say, just for perchance, that he stumbles across a human corpse. This is not an animal corpse. Remember, Samson killed a lion, and then he goes back and he pulls honey out of the lion's carcass. That didn't negate his role as a Nazir, a Nazirite. It didn't cancel his vow. That act did not. So it's not an animal corpse that he has to avoid. It's a human corpse he has to avoid. The tamei of which we started off with in chapter 5. Let's say he accidentally stumbles across that. Then I can understand sin sacrifice, because in Judaism, there are levels of sin. The slightest infraction requires a restoration. The greatest infraction, there is no restoration. There is no sacrifice for the greatest sin. But for the slightest of sins, there is sacrifices. Unintentional. Let's say that he makes it through perfectly. Commits no sin. During the period of time that he's under the vow, he's still required to bring a sin sacrifice. Why? Jesse? Frank? What's the sin sacrifice for? Where is the sin here? What did he do wrong?
Well, the idea that someone could do this for personal gain versus just a higher spiritual connection to God.
Okay, but then there's no real vow there, because, again, you're forbidden to do this, to take on the responsibility of the high priest, just like Korah was forbidden, and Korah died for it.
Right.
So let's go under the presumption that this is a person, a non-Levite, that wants this close bond. He's living like Job. Why must he bring a sin sacrifice? Where is his transgression? Where did he mess up? Where did he go wrong? This is a question that the sages, this is a question the Talmud struggles with. There is an answer for it, and I think it's a pretty good answer, but it's still left open as to where's the sin? Where did he miss the mark by wanting to be closer to God?
Well, the Rashi mentions that for a deep sin, in other words, there may be a grave someplace that they don't know of that he walks across, and there and then that's a sin.
Okay, and that's the unintentional.
Right.
And the rabbis really do build guardrails upon guardrails, and then they start erecting fences and build fences when you can't even walk across a grave. But that's not what we're getting to here. Again, let's pretend like he's out in the wilderness and there is the 12 square feet that he lives in. There's no grave underneath it, and he lives Torah. Now, I know Christianity is going to tell you it's impossible to live Torah, but God's going to tell you it is impossible. So who are you going to believe, God or Christianity? The point is
God.
this.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
go with God.
I'll go with God's side. I admit I'm not perfect, but nonetheless, I'm going to believe what God says before I believe what man says. So going on with this, because there's no setup here as far as, well, this but not that, and if 3 of those, then add 2 of this. That's not here in our setup with the Nazir. Let me jump to the chase for you, Jesse, unless you have an answer.
Not immediately off the top of my head, but guesses maybe I can offer. The Nazarite is taking.
Here's a clue.
Hold on.
Okay.
The Nazarite is taking the slot, if you will. They're not doing the job of the high priest, but they are taking a position as high priest in a spiritual sense.
Okay.
So perhaps
maybe that's a sin. Well, then,
maybe
when the New Testament tells me that my body is a temple and the Holy Spirit lives within me, how is that any less of a sin than the Nazir?
Because your body has its own point and place and purpose.
Okay, but the body has imperfections. The body is not clean. Hence, the corpse of a body is unclean, but the corpse of a lamb has no impurity, spiritually speaking. Here's your clue. Verse 2. Read verse 2, Jesse. So as you read verse 2, think about it. What could possibly be the thing?
Already saw it. As soon as you said it in that fashion, I already saw it. Using the Chabad's translation, I'll even read verse 1 as well, just to tie it all in. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, a man or a woman who sets himself apart by making a Nazarite vow to abstain for the sake of the Lord."
What's the sin?
He's separating himself from the community. He's already a part of the main community. He has his...
There you go.
He's not part of the Levites, but he is separating himself from the community. He is to be spiritually inclined with the Levites.
So this is not a bad thing. And
no,
that's
it's
why
not.
I think this is why God has Moses write it this way. This is not a bad thing. God understands man's heart, just like Aaron's 2 sons that approached out of emotion, whatever it might have been. Their death was really not a bad thing. God, please take me in the same form that you took them, instantaneous, without pain, without suffering. But nonetheless, God is saying the community is what matters to me. Don't you remember how we started out this Torah portion? We were counting. And how we're going to end this Torah portion? We're counting. We're counting the community. The entire community counts. It's the entire community that's important to God. God is Scrooge McDuck, counting his precious things.
2.
Yeah, he's counting. He's counting his precious things. Every coin matters. I'm counting you because you count. You're important. You're valuable. And as soon as you withdraw yourself from that community and the role that you play in that community, for the loftiest of reasons, the most holy of reasons, the most righteous of causes and reasons, you're separating yourself from the community. And God wants you in the community, acting within the community. It's not wrong to take on the Nazarite vow. But if you do understand this, we're still going to have a special relationship. But my concern, says God, is for the entire community, not just you. Not only you. Don't you remember how we count ourselves? We go in and we pay the temple tax, the half shekel, and we say, "I am Chris, the son of Ari, of the tribe of Mattisyahu," and we go down the list. I only count as an individual as long as I'm counting and being counted within the whole. It's a double entendre there. It truly is the ultimate dilemma. I am an individual responsible for myself before God. I cannot pay the price for anybody else, and nobody else can pay the price for me. But I'm only that individual as long as I'm a part of the community. It's a strange mix, but it's beauty within the eyes of God. So, now what, Jesse? I mean, we're looking at at separation because I love you. Unconditionally, I love you. And then we go into the sota of I want to restore this, but we're at such odds. I don't know how to bring it back together. Is there some type of grace that allows this to happen? And then we go into the final, I want more. Can there be peace?
How about we jump straight into the Aaronic benediction for this one? And I will read it out because I'm not proclaiming it in the place of a Levite on people, and two, it's better that I just read it out so that people can grasp the Hebrew to it all. Yes, you are.
Okay, I'm there again. So let's start out. We're down in what is it? Chapter 6, verse 22. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, This is how you shall bless the children of Israel, saying to them. Now.
Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chunecha. V'yaseh Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
And it ends with, They shall bestow my name upon the children of Israel so that I will bless them. And this is the one thing that a lot of people miss. The commandment is, this is how you will bless the children of Israel. And it ends with, thus, once you have done this, you have bestowed my name on the children of Israel. And the purpose of bestowing my name on the children of Israel is so that I will bless them. And if you notice within the Berkat Konim, the Aaronic blessing, he's asking God, may the Lord bless you and guard you. May the Lord cause his countenance to shine on you and grant you favor, grant you chen, grace. May the Lord rise up his countenance, look up toward you, and grant you shalom, peace. 3 simple little stanzas. What on earth and in heaven above do they mean, Jesse and Frank?
Well, it is rather interesting that I've actually heard from a certain rabbi not too long ago that
Rabbi Foreman.
Yeah, Rabbi Foreman. I couldn't remember the name. Sorry, it slipped me 2 seconds there. But Rabbi Foreman, he's a very good teacher. He runs aleph-beta.org. Yes, I just now did a little insert there for him. But Rabbi Foreman was doing a teaching on trying to portray how the Aaronic benediction is the perfect example for God saying, and this is how you will be a parent. This is how you will literally raise your children. And the way he portrayed it was of the light of when it is, may the Lord bless you and watch over you, as it is translated in Chabad. It is of that mindset. It is that aspect that you do with your children throughout your entire parenting career.
So Fiddler on the Roof?
even in, say again.
So Fiddler on the Roof?
Yes.
I can see it, yeah. But even more so, this starts even with the child being in the womb. It's the whole mindset. Blessing implies an increase of what they are. Anytime you bless someone, you are hoping that they can become better, or they can receive more, or something of a higher setting than what they normally are at currently. So the mindset behind blessing someone, is you're hoping they would increase. You are willing for their addition to themselves, so they learn more, they develop more.
Well, it's interesting you start off with blessing, because the bracha, the root of the word bracha, which is spelled the same way, it's just different vowels, is barech. Barech is bet resh chaf. And however you want to tie this together, I find the gematria of this, the numerical value of these three letters, fascinating. For those that aren't familiar with gematria, and it's just that of putting a numerical value to each letter, so that whenever you have words, you can see the association of certain words that have the same numerical value. Now, with bracha or barak, we have the bet, which has a numerical value of 2. It's the second letter of the alphabet. We have resh, which has a numerical value of 200, which is strange, but it has a numerical value of 200. And we have the chaf, which has a numerical value of 20. 220. 2, the letter 2 represents multiplicity, and it's being multiplied by ones, by tens, and by hundreds. And the issue here is you're blessing the individual, not his wealth. His wealth isn't being increased. So when on Friday nights, when we bless our children with this same blessing, we bless our children, and what we're literally saying is, may you increase within yourself and with your progeny. We're saying, may you multiply whatever value I place on you, may that be multiplied by tens and by hundreds. Whatever you think your worth is, whatever your arts are, whatever your natural abilities are, whatever your gifts from God are, may they be multiplied by tens and by hundreds. It has nothing to do with wealth. It has everything to do with your purpose before God. It has everything to do with who and what you are. And so that's the whole idea of blessing, is that you're going to multiply, you're going to increase. And part of that is you have offspring. The blessing of Abraham is his offspring. So much so that you can't even, if you can count the stars, you'll count his offspring. So we also go into Yivarechecha Adonai Ve'yishmerecha. And the root in there, Jesse, do you remember what that is? What's the marecha? What's the root dealing with here? Because you talked about the womb. What is the womb in Hebrew? Do you recall?
Oh no, it's on the top.
I caught you off guard. The
Sort of.
rachamim.
The rachamim. Yes.
Rachamim. It comes from the same root.
Yes.
Of the recha. So we see the
it's-
womb inside these two words. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're good. It's the V'yishmerecha and Yivarecha have a similar root word, which is the root that you are using, which expounds into the understanding of the womb. It is through this understanding that Rabbi Foreman helped us with. I am going to give him all the honor for this one, because I was amazed whenever I saw it. It is the portrayal of the womb that is the perfect explanation of at least the first verse of this blessing. You
I'm
are
sorry.
both
I've got to
blessed
cut
and
you off.
watch.
I'm
Am
sorry.
I speeding up here?
No, you're good. You're good. I need to make a correction here because I don't want to mislead anybody. Rachem is womb. Rachem is womb. But from this same root, we get the word compassion. Compassion is rachamim.
Rachamim, yes, yes.
Womb is rachem. And here within this is yevarecha veyesh merecha. And we have that root buried within here. And we
In
get the
both
picture.
words.
Yeah, in both words. And we get the picture of the womb because within the womb we have the child being developed. And
Watched over.
What's the whole thing of the blessing? May God bless you and keep you, and may He guard you. It's more than just watch over you; it's guard you. Where else are you blessed? Meaning you're multiplying, you're increasing
You're
exponentially,
developing.
hour by hour, day by day. That child within the womb, within 9 months, grows exponentially. It truly is a blessing while it's within this womb, and then it's guarded by the waters. It's protected by the waters about it. And so we see truly this is the compassion, but it's not a selfless love. Oddly enough, it's not a selfless love, because if the child doesn't grow, what happens?
The body itself destroys
The
it.
body rejects it and it's aborted.
Miscarriage.
And it's a miscarriage. So if it doesn't grow and it becomes death, to preserve the sake of the body, the woman, that what once was potential for life and no longer has potential for life is going to be rejected and miscarried. So it's not truly a full unconditional love. There is something of a condition here.
It's judged based on the potential of the child itself.
But it's the potential of, are you being blessed? Are you growing? Then you're guarded. You're nourished. You're watched over. So go ahead, Jesse.
Since we hit that point rather hard, we can proceed to the next blessing, because I truly view this Aaronic benediction as 3 blessings in one if you really want to play with it in this fashion. May the Lord cause his countenance to shine upon you and favor you. The English translation is actually a good way to put it, considering the whole concept of God shining on you. It seems a little. It would be better if it's worded as God's face is illuminated upon seeing you, if you will.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's a mindset of his countenance increases upon seeing what you have become, what you have developed into.
Yeah, so the word for shine or illuminate is ya'ir. But ya'ir is a verb. It's not a noun, which means it's acted upon and must be acted by. So what is the thing that it's being acted upon? Is it acted upon you, or is it acted upon the face of God? And so Judaism sees this, may the face of God shine, may it light up upon you. And it's the same thing as a mother seeing her newborn. As I remember when there was
you can't help but smile upon seeing the baby.
There was a time of separation. I went out to Colorado to try to establish a job and a house for my wife and my newborn son. And Jesse was probably a year, 2 years old at that time. He's probably coming on 2 years old, because I remember he was walking. I think he was walking. But anyways, I'm in the restaurant with my dad, and we're waiting for Pam and Jesse to join us. We're in Colorado at this point in time. Pam's moving up to us, and as soon as Jesse saw me, his eyes lit up and he yells out across the room. I mean, the whole restaurant went, "Oh!" I'm serious. It was that pronounced. And Jesse says, "Papa!" And he yells it across the room. I know he's embarrassed, but he doesn't remember this. But it's that experience. May God's face light up because of you. Wow. May God find joy. May God smile. May God's illumination get brighter because of you. What a blessing. Oh my goodness! Go ahead, Jesse. I'm
Oh,
gonna.
you're good. You're
No, I'm
good.
gonna run wild with it if you don't step in here.
Well, you're helping proceed the progression onward, and that's the reason why I say you're good. As we continue and find favor and favor you, as the way they've worded it in Chabad, but I've heard many translations be and grant you grace or be gracious unto you, and that brings and that since we are continuing this theme of a parenting situation, when you when a child turns away, goes a different direction, it may not be a bad direction, but goes a different direction. Or if they make a mistake, it is of the mindset of you still grant grace, mercy. You still teach them in the way that they should be taught, but your discipline is not because they are acting out in public. Your discipline is because they did something that needed to be corrected. Any discipline that is just because the child is running wild is more of a discipline of trying to protect your outlook among everyone else, while a discipline of someone who did something wrong is trying to correct the mistakes that they made, hence the grace.
Yeah. So the word here is veyechoneka, and it comes from the Hebrew lachanin, which is related to, or is really a an extension of kinam, grace. But kinam really means free, freely, to give free. So it what's trying to be betrayed here is this is a complete unconditional love. And truly, that's what we give our children once they're born. There is a true unconditional love. I'm going to sacrifice my time. After all, you're going to wake me up 5, 6 times at night, and I'm going to get up and go take care of it. And you're going to spoil all over yourself, and I'm going to clean that up too. And I'm still going to love you, go ooh goo gaga, and I'm going to spend money on you, and I'm going to love on you. And worse yet, the grandparents are going to come over, and they're going to do the same thing 3 times over than what I could do. This is,
And the grandparents end up giving the child a trumpet, which they play 24 hours a day. But you still love them.
yeah. So here, it's regardless of your potential. You have the autistic child. Guess what? I'm loving you the same. You have a crippled child. Guess what? I'm loving you the same. You have the Heisman Trophy winner. Okay, I might. No, I won't love you more. I'm going to love you the same.
Well, you might change their mind if they go to OSU instead of OU.
Well, yeah, if he went to OU and won the Heisman Trophy, I might love him a little bit more. No, I won't. But it's
You'll
that
be more
whole,
proud is a better way to word that.
yeah, it's the whole thing of, there's one thing about the compassion within the womb. Now we have, may he shine upon you, may his face light up when he sees you, and grant you unconditional love, thereby developing you, thereby you growing even more. And so we see the blessing from the very first line increase even again in the second line. It's almost as if we went from the 2 for the bet for the bracha in the first line to 200 in the unconditional love of the second line. So how do we get to the third line, and what does it mean?
Which, to add more to this, and granted, we're about halfway through the Aaronic benediction, 2/3 actually, but it does bring to mind many Jewish congregations will end the Aaronic benediction with, and I'm going to read it in English, not in Hebrew. They will, after they finish quoting the Aaronic benediction, some of them will actually say, who in reference to God, who makes us holy with the holiness of Aaron and has commanded us to bless his people Israel with love. It is the Aaronic benediction as a whole, and granted, we're going to lead more into it.
And your addition there is Talmud and tradition.
Yes.
That addition is what you would hear in a synagogue after the Berkat
Yes.
Kohanim. It's not something you're going to find in Torah, but what they're trying to do is tell you exactly
what the Aaronic benediction is all about.
The Aaronic benediction is about these three kinds of love that Aaron is asking God to bestow upon the children of Israel, and God's responding is, once you ask for this, I will do it. Go ahead.
Exactly. And as we proceed onward, we hit the third and final blessing. May the Lord raise his, as Chabad has it, may the Lord raise his countenance towards you and grant you peace, which is an interesting outlook on it, considering if we look back.
It's an odd choice of words.
Well, if we look back at the mindset of the countenance, as you described it, with the whole face shining upon seeing him, in that kind of unconditional love, you are still looking down upon the child as a father would look to their children at a young age.
Yeah, and how many children transgress over and over again? And you might correct them, but you're still looking down on them in love. You're always going to forgive them. But now we're at a different stage, because now, instead of looking down, not the compassion coming down, not the panav, the face looking down, this is odd. May God look up to you?
May God,
where and how do we do this?
Frank.
Frank, go ahead.
Now that's why this Rashi makes sense. Because it says, may the Lord raise his countenance towards you by suppressing his wrath. Now, none of the other things say anything about wrath. But here, may he look up to you, suppress his wrath. That's kind of weird, but it does fit in the way that you and Chris have been going.
And I do understand what you mean by that, suppressing the wrath, because if we look at the way this section is done, may the Lord raise his countenance towards you and grant you peace. Let's assume we are still following the mindset of raising a child. So what happens when you get to the very end, and the child may not follow the exact path you wanted them to go down? They choose to believe slightly differently, or they choose to do something in their own household slightly differently. It is how many parents out there do you know of who does not want to reach over there and go, you should fix this. It's your life. It's your life. Run it how you want, but you should fix that, or you should change this.
The bread cooks a little bit better if you fold it over here.
Exactly. It's
so in all by diverting or dividing by diverging on a path. So if you chose to go to OSU instead of OU, then Chris would still love you, but that's cool.
So it's that aspect of allowing the child to have individuality, to make their own choices. And we see that in God with us, is he's allowing us to make our choices. He even tells us within Torah, choose you this day. He doesn't say, I'm going to hate you if you don't choose it exactly right. You're beautifying the commandment in this way. My wife loves buying all this little Judaica for every holiday, and she found this it was in an estate sale. And I don't think the people at that estate even knew what they had, but it's a silver box, and it's ornately designed. You take the lid off the box, and it's a weird shape. It's kind of an oval shape, but it's got this silk cloth on the inside. And everybody that looked at it said, what in the world is that? You know what my wife said? That's for the estrog.
For Sukkot, the estrog.
For Sukkot.
Yeah. Isn't that a big lemon?
Yeah. But there's no commandment for that matter, there's no commandment about the estrog, period. It just says the three beautiful fruits of a tree, or the three trees that have beautiful fruit. However you want to
use
translate that one.
spices.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's called a citron. Is that the other name for it?
A citron or an estrog.
Yeah.
But the whole point is, this was a case that somebody was using to beautify the commandment of have the etrog, the citron, have the lulav, have the branches, and wave them during Sukkot. And where am I going to keep this etrog that is being used to perform a positive commandment, a good mitzvot? Well, I want to beautify this, and so they make a silver box for it. I mean, it's crazy. But it's that mindset that I want. It's that desire, that love that I want of looking at this. Yeah, that's it up there, Jesse. It's right behind you. It's that mindset and that love of even the fruit. Really, I'm going to make a special box for this fruit. And Jesse, see if you can.
Well, I'll start talking, and so people can see what it looks like. Because now, granted, Mama currently has it full of dreidels, but. It is if you ignore the dreidels, there it is right there. The velvet lining on the inside and the silver casing on the outside. And
very ornate design. And in Oklahoma, really? And this was not a Jewish family that had it, so I don't even know where they got it from or what they were using it for. It could have been a jewelry box, but as we're looking at it, we're seeing anyways, the whole point is beautifying a commandment. So let's get back to what we were talking about, and it's that aspect of my sons are not going to keep the traditions exactly the way I kept them. In fact, I want them to keep them better. I am not a good parent. I am not a good man of God. I'm not a good person. I've got so many faults, and I've done so many things that it hurts me when I look back on my life. You know, I can be like David and be like so many others. Is my God, it would have been better had I not been born. But I'm going to keep these traditions. I'm going to love the Lord my God, though He slay me, yet shall I believe in Him. And my son takes a tradition and he does it a little bit different. Or worse yet, he ignores the tradition. He doesn't keep the tradition at all. He doesn't keep, God forbid, he does not keep Yom Kippur, Passover. Now where am I? I have to let him go. And that's what this one is. May God rise up His face to you. In other words, God is looking at you as an individual. It's no longer looking down. It's no longer being protected in the womb. It's no longer looking down and giving you unconditional love. Now we've transcended all that. And He's looking at you as you are an individual. You have free will. You have free choice. And within this free choice and this free will, may God grant you peace, shalom, completeness. And Frank, the whole goal of that last line is so that you'd be restored. Because the end of it is, Aaron, if you say it this way, if you bless the people, if you ask of me to bless the people this way, I will. No equivocation, no doubt. I will bless them.
So let me ask something real quick, because we're
talk about promise of God. If the church got a hold of this, oh my goodness, they'd be saying the Berkat Chonim every night over their children, let alone just Friday night. I mean, if they got a hold of this and realized God promised you, if you do this, then I will bless them. I will, regardless of how bad it gets.
Okay.
So, Jesse, Frank, thoughts, words?
I wanted to add one thing. When you were talking about how we're blessing the children.
It's a live show, so we can't have crickets and dead air.
You can't. No. You can't hear him. He is actually talking.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Papa
I
couldn't
had a
hear you,
power
so
fluctuation, and everything went dead, and then came back on again. And I'm like, ah. So, no, when you talked about how the child is, and you get to do these things, do these commandments, you get to, um, it's like you want to do them so you can please your father. That's the only way I can put it. You do it so you can please your mom and your dad, because you want that. Ah, well done. You want that little bit of recognition from your parents or your father. Does that make sense?
I it it does make sense. It it's of a sorry, I'm my mind had like three things going on at once.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good. It makes sense because there is that feeling, that mindset that as a child develops, they go through the different stages of how they are to be treated, how they are to be respected, because it is that same prominence that God gives to us, including, to expound on it, the whole part where God says, raise his countenance towards you and grant you peace, because we actually missed that last bit. God doesn't change us. He stopped changing us the moment he finished the 7 days of creation, the 6 days of creation. He stopped trying to fix us, to change us. He let us develop on our own as individuals. What he did change, what he did alter, what he did beautify and fix, if you don't mind the choice of phrasings, was he created a place where we can have our peace, our moment of time to build that relationship with one another. It is the Shabbat. It is that attitude of God of saying, I'm not going to fix you, but I will fix our relationship with each other. So here is the Shabbat. This is where we will meet. This is where we will develop ourselves between each other as individuals.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I'm not going to fix you, because for me to fix you would inject, or would some way affect free will. But I will fix our relationships. So when I get upset at my sons for doing things, and then the older they get, I'm not in a position to correct them. I can give advice at this point in time, but I can't correct them. So when they do wrong, all I can do is I just look down. I look away. And so that last verse is saying, may God turn his head, may he look up again and grant you peace. And so that's it. It's may, regardless of where I've sinned and where I've gone wrong, may God still look up and look to you and restore that relationship, so that there's a completeness here. There's peace between you and God. And wow, going through that whole teaching and seeing it and understanding, oh my goodness, I've never heard it taught this way. Something about that teaching that Rabbi Foreman presented just really shook me, to the core. This is the Birkat Kohanim, which we've all heard. If you're in any Messianic congregation, somebody's going to stand up and try to sing it in a special way, a different twist, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's so beautiful! I love the way you do that," and all that great stuff. But everybody forgets that, one, it's the commandment for Aaron to do this, not you. Doesn't mean you can't. Judaism recognizes this, and they say, is there a Cohen in the house? That, not quite this way. Is there a Cohen in the house? Please come up and give the Birkat Kohanim. And if not, then, or even if there's one recognized, than the one that is going to stand up and give the Berkat Kohanim. They recognize this is the role, this is the responsibility of a Kohen. God didn't say, Moshe, tell moms and dads if they bless their kids this way, that I will bless them. He didn't say, you know what, if somebody thinks they're a leader and has a great gift of gab and wants to lead a congregation, stand up and give this blessing. No, this is a commandment to Aaron. This wasn't a commandment to a woman, a child, a non-Levite, a non-descendant of Aaron. It doesn't mean you can't. Don't get me wrong. Don't get offended. This was a commandment to Aaron and his descendants. And the answer, if Aaron and his descendants do this commandment, the answer is, then God will bless them. If you invoke my name on them, then I will bless them. How do you invoke your name? Yivarechecha. Jesse, I almost don't even want to do it because I know I'll mess it up. Yivarecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. Ye'ir Adonai panav elecha ve'chunecha. Yaseh Adonai panav elecha ve'yasim lecha shalom.
Yep. Chris, can you hear me yet?
You want to be doubled? You want to be increased? 10-fold, 200-fold? This is it.
Okay, with that, Jesse, ask Chris to give a wrap up. You give a wrap up, and I'll give a wrap up real quick.
I'll to translate, since I know Papa can't still hear you. Papa, give a quick wrap up, then I'll wrap up, and he'll finish us off and shut us down, because this is a lot. This is truly a lot. How do you synopsize this? Best way I can synopsize it, based on what we've learned today, it's God's love is multiple, infinite, and always seeks for your survival. And I say survival because even when you sin, he still does the whole thing of go here so that you don't be destroyed. Do this so that your sin does not cause your destruction. Because I love you and I want you protected. And I want you to become the potential you are made to become. And you know what?
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know what happened, but sometime during the show, Frank, I lost your audio. I can't hear you, and so I apologize for talking over you or around you. So I went in and signed on to YouTube to hear what you were saying, and I noticed that we have some people asking questions in the chat room. One of them is that, and this goes way back, so I'm not sure when these were posted on there. I sincerely do apologize. But one of the questions asked is it a disgrace for a man to shave his head? I think maybe we covered that a little bit tonight, and that is, well, here's a commandment for the Nazir. He has to shave his head before taking the vow, and then again after taking the vow. And it's somewhat the way it's been described to me. It's representative of a new beginning, a new growth. And so even as we're approaching sundown tonight, and we're doing Havdalah, we look at our fingernails to see how we're growing, how we're growing in spiritually as well as physically. The days, the hours are passing before us, and so the timing and the length of being under the vow is somehow represented in the hair. What that represents, I don't know. I think there's something fascinating within there, and I'd love to look it up scientifically, physically, as well as the spiritual connection to it. So if someone finds that, it'd be great to see. Then the next post is, it's been my understanding that women's hair should be her covering, not a scarf. I'm not sure where you're getting that from. We saw here tonight that the woman that is accused of that's under the law of jealousy, she's uncovered, and there's going to be a couple of other places we're going to see Rivka jumping down and covering herself before she meets Isaac. We're going to see the different aspects of godly women in Torah that cover their hair, and from these things we get the aspect within Judaism of modesty for a woman, and that is a married woman in the company of other men will cover her head via scarf. We see the extreme religious, ultra-Orthodox Jewish women will actually shave their head and wear a wig. What is it? A shtetl? A shtetl? Shtetl? I can't remember the word for it. The whole point is modesty. You don't belong to yourself, you belong to your beloved. And the picture, if nothing else, the picture of that is, I'm covered. I already have a covering. I don't need you to cover me. We have a similar aspect within Judaism with the kippah or a hat of some sort. And you notice that I wear a hat, and generally Jesse wears a hat. And it is that I'm under a covering. I'm under the covering of God, even as a man. I want to be careful there because I don't want to offend those that are reading only the New Testament and taking Christian teachings only, because there goes into things with that. Let's see, was there any other questions there? Helena was saying that looks like hadn't really delved into Numbers chapter 5, especially verse 18, that much. So yeah, we just hope that with this show that we present things to you. We're not telling you wrong, you're right. The name of the show is 2.5 Opinions. The reason it's 2.5 Opinions is because we all have opinions. But this show, we're not concerned with your opinion. I'm not concerned with Jesse's opinion. I'm not concerned with Frank's opinion. In fact, my opinion matters nothing. The only opinion that really matters is what's God's opinion. And we've approached the Torah with, this is how God thinks. This isn't just what he does. This is how he thinks. And so we're trying to get into the mind of God with it. There was one more question here, and for some reason I can't scroll down anymore. It says, what is the root of Adonai? Well, the meaning of Adonai is simply Lord, and anybody that's in charge or in leadership can be deemed Adonai. When we use Adonai and when it's used specifically for Hashem, the name of God or the position of God, then it is just that. It's a title of position. It's a title. It's not necessarily a name. It's a title. So the title is, you are Lord. You are Adonai. The root, I'm going to have to look that one up. Jesse, any thoughts, any ideas on that? Or Frank, do you guys know the root of Adonai? For some reason, I've not looked that one up. I haven't. I'm going to have to go back in the Hebrew text and see what the root of Adonai is. Adon, it would be Adon. Because Adonai would be my Lord. Adon would be Lord.
Jesse,
or leader, ruler.
Sorry. Chris, can you hear me at all?
I don't think he can still hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a man shaving his head. Again, I think it's all about teshuvah. Because God's grace, God's mercy, through his commandments, allows us to return to him. If we have a difficulty, he allows us to return. So the Most High, blessed be he, gives us a lot of love. That's my wrap up. So
Well then, so this has been a lovely session of 2.5 Opinions. We ran a little later than normal, but hey, we got into a good topic. and I could, so long as everyone at Messianic Lamb Radio doesn't mind us going a little over, I say, hey, we're getting information out there. We're getting opinions out there is a better way to word that. And we're just trying to give a different opinion about what God wants and what God has intended for us based on what we read in Torah and based on a Jewish understanding from time to time from what we do find elsewhere. Because if I've learned anything in a Jewish mindset and even a Christian mindset, though I don't know how many would actively admit this part, is that you cannot fully understand everything without a teacher, without a means in which to learn. Hence why in Judaism there is Talmud and there is Torah. And Talmud is the moments where many rabbis in the history of Talmud's creation got together and said, we are so spread out, we are so scattered among the nations. How else do we pass on our teachings to everyone who wants to hear them? Our understanding, our opinion, if you don't mind that coin of phrase, to what God has said in Torah. And that is why Talmud is viewed heavily in a lot of Jewish circles, and that is why Talmud is viewed.
What Talmud is the explanation. This is how you do Torah. This is the opinions and the arguments. And what a lot of people don't understand is Talmud is an argument. And it is 2.5 opinions. It really is. And sometimes where the dissenting opinion in one case becomes the opinion for proof text in another case, and it's really fun. But here's the whole point. 2.5 opinions takes the approach, and we've chosen to look at what is the Jewish understanding of the text. Why? Because in Romans chapter 3, Paul tells us, he says, so what is the advantage of being a Jew, or what is the advantage of circumcision? He says, much, in every way. For that matter, if you go back to Romans chapter 2, is it chapter 2 or chapter 1, where he's greeting and he says, to the Jew first, oh yeah, and also the Greek. Well, Paul was not a disciple or an apostle to the Jews. He was an apostle to the Greeks or to the Gentiles. And so it's greetings first to the Jews and also the Greeks. But in Romans chapter 3, he says, so what is the advantage of a Jew? After spending a full chapter blasting them, calling them blind. Well, actually, he didn't. It's a misunderstanding. But calling them blind and deaf, I mean, all these horrible things, it almost sounds anti-Semitic. And then he comes up in Romans chapter 3, verse 1. So what is the advantage of the Jew, or what is the advantage of circumcision? Much in every way, because it was to the Jew that was given the Torah, the law, the ordinances, and the oracles. Oracles is the prophets. It was to the Jew that was given the law and the ordinances, the Torah. It was to the Jew that was given the prophets, for which all these things are based on. So it really is incumbent of us coming into Torah understanding to at least look at, at least give ear to, what's the Jewish understanding of this? How do they perceive this? And the more I delve into it, the more I see such beauty, such wisdom, such grace, such mercy. It's fun. And even at the end of the day, to the rabbis and the Jewish understanding, it's not my opinion that matters. It's only God's. So with that, I'm not the Rebbe.
Okay. So Jesse?
I'm Yishai.
And I'm Frank, the irreverent one. Thank you for listening to 2.5 Opinions. Thanks. I have a great group of people to talk to and a great group of people to talk about Torah. And Chris is right. It doesn't matter what our opinion is. It matters what God's opinion is. So with that, shalom, shavua tov, lehithrot. We'll talk to you later. All right? Shalom.
Shavuot tov.